Here we go. Happy Tuesday, everybody. Hey, Rodney, how are you today?
Fantastic, Andy. How are you doing?
I like this new weather. This warmer weather. It is kind of new.
It's new for us. We enjoy it because we only get spring for like 7 days.
7 to 10 days, and then it's off into summer. It's turned
Well,
into
it
sweat
might
bags.
revert back to winter too. You never know.
Okay, you never know. Hi, Angie. Angie, how are you? How's that? Ooh, I bet it's wet out there, huh? Hope you're okay. I hope the Hubs is doing all right. Good to see your face in there. So, Rodney, what got any exciting off the top of our news, off the top of your head news today? Anything?
Not,
Do
not much of
anything?
anything. Pretty relaxing. I'm just in a deep depression since hunting season's over, and I'm having to get back to work every day. So just trying to get out of bed every day right now, Andy.
You dream of ducks? Is that what it is? You're just
Yeah,
dreaming of ducks?
that's it.
All right. So here we go. This is going to be a good one. It's going to be. We got some details here that I'm not really. I don't like to get too deep into details because it can kind of get a little bit, I don't know, a little thick sometimes. But here's what we're going to talk about. The housing market is changing. But what we have to look at when we're going into this season, any season, is what we call leading indicators. There's leading indicators that tell you where the market seems to be headed, and there's lagging indicators that show up after the fact. And we talk about that all year long. I mean, the lagging indicators, for example, would be where inflation is today. That's after all this stuff was done months ago. This is where we are. That's a lagging indicator and just shows the results. Whereas leading indicators, and we're going to talk about housing market, for example, touring is one, tells us where the housing market is going to go. So, now I would ask you this, Rodney, in general, are applications rising for you guys in general, the mortgage industry?
Yes, I think over the last few weeks we've seen an increase. And I know more about this area than all other areas, but this area we've definitely seen an increase with some weather you can actually get outside in and look at a house. For us it's a big deal. People up north, they may be thinking, oh, we don't. But typically when there's snow, there's no showings, right? I mean,
Yep.
that's the way it
Yep.
is. So we've had some bad weather, so it's for us. And overall in the country, it seems to be the same thing as well, from what I'm reading.
Yes.
Now, when I say, when it goes from 0 to up 2%, that it's not a lot, but it is. It is an uptick.
That's a leading indicator.
Yes.
you know, that's called growth. On some headlines, that'd be touring is up
200%.
100%.
Yes. Yes. But it's not. Yeah.
Now, full disclosure, I'm getting a lot of these details, these numbers and statistics from Redfin. Now, I'm going to tell you, they're a competitor. I got no problem with those guys. Redfin, Zillow, they're good companies. But what Zillow does and Redfin does really well, in my estimation, is data. They're just fantastic at data, and there's enough Redfin activity across the country compared to the Keller Williams and all that it's a good sampling, and so their numbers are going to run pretty true with the sampling. So I feel pretty good about them. So the numbers, and we're going to show you a little bit how this works. Some of this is going to be coming from those guys. So, and
It's just a new world, Andy, when a leading indicator is searches on a home, like Google searches or Redfin searches, Yahoo searches. That's wild. It's been that way for the last several years now, and people give those statistics out. Like if there are more Google searches for homes or Redfin in this case, it's pretty wild that that's an indicator now, isn't it?
it is, but that's always been. It's together with. There's a company called Showing Time that is probably the largest in the country, and a lot of people use their metrics on is there an uptick in activity. Now, the purpose of and the point of this article is What Rodney and I and everybody else under the sun that's in our industry has been talking about is what's happened to the volume. The home sales volume it's in the tank. I mean, it's just, relatively speaking, it's in the tank. And so everybody's looking for any kind of good news on, is there going to be growth someplace? And this is where it starts, with showings. And so it says some house hunters are dipping their toes back into the market after a harsh winter froze them out in the start of January. Redfin's home buyer demand index, which is just an indicator of how many people are getting out there, rose 6% from a week earlier during the week ending in January 28th. So this is current information. This is, what's today, the 6th? This is just a few minutes ago, relative in terms of data. But that early stage demand hasn't translated into home sales yet. Mortgage purchase applications declined from a week earlier, and pending sales posted their biggest year-over-year decline in 4 months. Again, the applications, that's going to be leading. The pending is going to be a lagging, in my opinion. That's just the way because applications come first. And I'm getting ready to put out a video called The Ultimate First-Time Homebuyer's Guide. And it should be, a love song to lenders, because you gotta, and it isn't just because Rodney is my friend. By the way, we'll get to that in a second, because Rodney's my lender and everything. It's because as a professional, when I'm leading consumers down the road to buying a house, they've got to know what the numbers are. That's not what I'm trained for. So when we're talking about those mortgage applications, that's a good thing. That's where people go. By the way, my name is Andy Elliott. I'm a real estate agent here in Williamson County, Tennessee. We're talking to Rodney Wilds, who is also a lender in Williamson County, Tennessee. And I know that the next thing that we're going to do is probably talk about rates. Is that fair?
Right. Yeah, I'm loving it. I love it. 4 minutes into it. I don't care. Let's roll it.
That was Rodney yelling at me. Oh, come on. That's good stuff.
I couldn't hear it on my end. I don't know. Yeah, I could hear a little bit of it. All right, let's jump in. Let's take a look at this here. I put this on a six-month view, and you can see the last several months of this line has been, pretty flat, going up a little bit, going down a little bit, and you see kind of where it's hanging right now. Due to the job, we got some good job reports, which I'm not so sure how good they are, because all this seasonal adjustments, and we'll get into that. But we got a really good job report, which is kind of holding us in this pattern we're in right now, keeping rates kind of in this range. And then with that report, the Fed's also, their last meeting said they were not, looking more towards April for their first cut. So not any time in the immediate future. So, but with today's rates, I mean, they're hanging in. They made a huge improvement at the end of last year, and we're hanging on to that improvement. And that's a really good start for this year.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, I like it.
Okay, we're going to close that out. It's gone. There we go. Now, I did notice that it popped over 7% here in the last couple of days. Isn't that correct?
It may have for some customers. There's still plenty of customers well under the 6. I think I priced even a first time FHA buyer the other day, and it was like 6.25. So conventionals was a hair higher than that. I haven't priced a jumbo in the last few days. I think it was closer to 6.75, but it's still under 7% probably for most buyers.
Gotcha. And but I guess my point is, and we just have to bring this up because it's just a part of the way it is these days. in the last week, rates have bounced between pretty close to 6.5. Is that correct?
Somewhere in there, yeah, and 7,
somewhere
yeah. But yeah,
to back
yeah.
to back to 7. Now, in years past, and we won't go on about this, but I need to ask because I don't know. In years past, what would your normal fluctuation be? You know, from 1 month to the next, what would you call normal?
I don't know, man, what normal is anymore, Andy. And that's in sports, rates, politics. I really don't know what normal is anymore because, you know, the market just changes all the time and it shifts all the time. But normal, if you say the majority of the time, you don't see a lot. You know, what you're seeing like the last month or so isn't untypical. Like, you know, where the rates are just kind of hanging in a certain market, dipping up and down a little bit. That would probably be more normal than anything. The way they've been moving over the last couple months.
Mm-hmm.
It's that October to November, that first 30 days of that line chart where it just goes up like that, you know, and the rates are getting better, or it goes way down, you know, it's getting worse. Those are abnormal. Everything else just kind of chopping along, and then something dictates an event one way or the other.
Right. Yeah. And this last week it was the Fed coming in and
right. And
making their statements.
A lot of these numbers right now are holding us high. Okay. Think about they're holding us high versus getting us raised, in my opinion. I think they're just keeping us there because they got another good piece of data. And like we talked before, when they're moving this big battleship, so to speak, you know, this gives them an indicator that they can go another mile without hitting an iceberg or whatever before turning. So, I mean, that's kind of way I think about that is that gave them a little bit of flexibility of hang on just another second before.
Yeah. And there is I suppose this is getting off topic just a skosh, but we'll just touch on it because it'll lead back into where I was a minute ago. And that is that people think, and I'm not an economist, but I know how to read. And people respond, they expect that a jobs report that goes up, especially it was expected 150 or 158, and then it came in at 350, which is insane. I mean, that's a lot.
Right.
But even the experts are going, something doesn't seem right. They recalibrate those things during the course of the month after those are released. And it could be, they could be reading holiday employers or employees or, you know, whatever the case is. But the signal that seems to send when people have more jobs is there's going to be more money spent, and then inflation is going to stick around. That's what they think, and that lends Powell and those guys to hang on to the higher rates to keep that tamped down. And I listened to a guy, his name is Logan Matashari, I think, on the Housing Wire. If you listen to podcasts, it's really, really good. And his take on it is that it's not jobs we need to be looking for, it's job claims when it comes to unemployment and stuff, that he should be monitoring more closely the job claims, and that will tell him what to do with the Fed funds rate, because that's a lagging indicator. That tells you the result of what he's been doing, you know.
No, that's a great point. I'm kind of anxious to see, because I think they've done this in the last 2 years. They've come out gangbusters with this January number, and they've reduced them. I think the last 2 years in a row, if I'm not mistaken, because they're not the actual numbers. They've estimated because of seasonal employment and all this other stuff. So I'm thinking a lot of America may still be working, instead of 40 hours, they might be working 32 hours or something. So I'm thinking that when the report gets adjusted, because I think maybe this time they've adjusted too much on seasonal and gave them too much credit then, but we'll see. I mean, it'll definitely wash out next month or the month after. But
And just a final kind of a point, we may visit on this when we get back to the article later, but one other point is that the jobless claims only ticked up what in your terms like a basis point. It was like nothing.
Yeah.
It was nothing. And how does that doesn't jive with the numbers? And that's what this guy is saying. And he's lobbying for what? I'm going to just keep going. He talks about the Fed's doing a pivot, and a pivot to him is a major change in policy. It's not 0.25. It's like a full point, something like that. That's a pivot, right?
Yeah.
And so at this point, he's just kind of steering, keeping things kind of between the lines and that kind of stuff.
Right.
And I'll let it go after this. And I look forward to hearing from you. Is he believes that a rate cut should be taking place in March? And he's just another guy. He's just another economist. Right. But he's pretty smart if you listen to him. But he's thinking that they're being too restrictive, that we could get back to good growth under inflation and survive if they cut a bit. I'll just say a bit, be a quarter,
right,
in March.
And I don't necessarily disagree with a cut in March, but I will say I kind of disagree in the fact that I think there's a big shift in policy. Now, he's defining the shift in policy of actually when they pull the trigger and lower something.
Yep.
But the Fed has openly come out talking about lowering. They've even said the date, March or April, they anticipate the first time. And that is a big shift in the Fed policy because they never would give that kind of. They've given direction this year for the first time in a long time and saying, that, like naming. And then all of them being kind of in unison saying, yeah, we're holding steady, but we anticipate lowering rates. So, I think that is a big shift in the way the way you looked at them or perceived some of the Fed meetings in the past. But I see what he's saying because they can say all they want. They ain't shifting until they lower it. So I get what he's saying, but the Fed's usually not full of hot air. They don't put hot air. They wouldn't say something like that because they know when they do, everybody fumbles. Everybody's listening and they're anticipating that.
And it's interesting you had mentioned that because there was one fumble that, and I'm not blaming Jerome Powell. I'm not blaming him for anything, but remember last week we were talking about how very subtle things can change the market. I mean, that's what these signals, there's 5 signals that the board sends, like, hey, things are looking good. Everybody's adjusting for downward flow. Jerome Powell did say in months past, could have been in many months, I can't pick the date that he did it. He talked about a housing bubble. And housing is not the mandate of the Fed. It's not. The economy is the mandate. Right. And housing is just the response to their policy on the economy. Damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead, that sort of thing. And so once he said, it's even mentioned housing bubble, and I'm certain that afterwards he was like, oh, shouldn't have said that. Now he owns it, There's a housing bubble? Yeah. Oh, God.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was talking about. That's it. Yeah.
So as we're going through all that, we've got a comment from Angie. My system's taking a minute. It'll come up. Bing. Whoops. You're right, Rodney. Much more hiring for part-time going on, long time getting laid off. Younger kids at lower wages are hired yet. And some of these big companies are doing some massive layoffs too, But that didn't mean it wasn't expected, It's spring. This is when stuff happens,
Yeah. And we've just seen an increase of employers trying to keep employees by, instead of maybe eliminating 1 or 2 positions, like say a department going to fewer hours. And we've seen a lot of pay stubs that reflect that, which is, it's good for people trying to, hang on to their jobs and stuff like that. So
now there's an insight that I hadn't. You really have your finger on the pulse of the economy when you're
Well, I don't
Yeah.
know about that. I have a very limited resource. I see the loans that are here. I get a very small view, but it tends to be, since we're somewhat of a bigger, I don't want to say bigger city, but we're fairly decent sized city. We some of it is comparable.
Well, what we are is we're more let's just call it what it is. Williamson County is quite affluent. And so your category of buyer is going to be different than some cities. I won't be specific, but they're going to be higher qualified.
Yeah.
And that being said, so when we're talking about the people you're working with are buyers that are getting ready to buy. I mean, there you go. And so touring homes, we've got that. Let's look at some of the leading indicators of what's happened here in the past little while. According to Mortgage News Daily, the average fixed rate, according to them, is 6.75. The recent change is down from 6.95. That's already kind of been messed with in the last few days. The year-over-year change is 6.17. So that's, if you're buying, you're probably thinking about that. It's up significantly. The weekly average 30-year fixed mortgage rate 6.9. This is Freddie Mac. 6.69 is what ending January 25th, sorry. Up 6.6 from a week earlier, up from 6.13. All right, next one. The mortgage purchase application seasonally adjusted, down 11% from a week earlier, up 10% from a month earlier as of January 26th. Golly.
Yeah, down 11, up 10. I mean, yeah, it's it's still low.
Yep, it's down 20% from year over year. The demand index is down 17. Here's my point on bringing all of this up. What we've been talking about and things bouncing around, it's no wonder that people are waiting to see what happens. That's just going to be the case. And the topic of today's show is, should I buy now or wait? Well, I've got an answer for that when we're ready to pull the trigger. So what's happening? You got anything to jump in there on, Rodney?
No, that's it's just recent, and this is like, if you want to look at some bad numbers, and I hate it's like this, but if you want to look at some bad numbers, application numbers, and month over month and year end stuff, look at December or January real estate numbers after the winter we've had. So these numbers look terrible, really, but it's to me, it's totally expected. We had a little bit of spurt in December. It looked like it showed that it went up 11% when kind of everybody got used to rates being down a little bit, and then just kind of spiked back up with the weather, holidays, jobs report, all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. And so we've got a touring activity that's up 9% from the start of the year. And at this time last year, it was 5% up from 2023. Here's some interesting numbers. Median sale price, week ending January 28th of this year, 361. Year over year change, that's only 5%. A couple of years before that, it was 20% was the increase. Median asking price, this is an interesting number, 392. Year over year change is 7%. So people are still, they're pushing that envelope is what that is. The median monthly mortgage payment, $25.95 at 6.69 mortgage rate. That's up 12.3%. Interesting.
Well, I mean, I'll throw you something on this. Is why I think this is just standard. Whenever especially rates are affecting purchases right now, probably more. Rates are probably the number one factor, in my opinion, that people are slow to buy. Okay. And so if rates are factor, then the higher the loan amount, the more of it's going to be a factor. So the reason these median sales prices, in my opinion, are low, and then they're actually just now starting to creep up with these numbers, is because people who are buying are not typically buying the bigger ones where that rate makes such an immense difference. A lot of people are buying, new homeowners are in the market. In the, I don't want to call it the lower end, but it is the lower end that's selling more because it's easier to finance, and the rate doesn't affect your payment as much, obviously, because you're not borrowing as much.
Right.
So when as the rates start going down, the median sales price may go to, it could go to 450 or something. And the only reason why is because if you get 5.5%, some of these $1 million homes might start selling, and it's going to start affecting that median sales price. To me, this median sales price and stuff like is a very good indicator of is exactly what is going on right now in your market. Like, you look at that, because if you go out right now and you have somebody looking for 341, you're going to have a difficult time finding them something, or 361. But when rates get down, those numbers are going to churn up a little bit when some of this, the bigger homes are selling.
That's exactly right. I have a fellow this week call in YouTube from California, and he's looking in our area. And one of the first places he looked at was that he noticed, because he's searching from California, he doesn't know Middle Tennessee. And one of the first places he saw was Clarksville. Well, the reason people see Clarksville is it's typically a little more modestly priced than, say, Middle Tennessee proper. And so he saw that. And one of the things that he wants to do, living in Middle Tennessee, not Clarksville, but, moving down into the main burg here, he's looking at stuff at 300 to 350. And I told him, we could probably do it, but it may not be exactly what you expect, that kind of a thing. Because there's not a million of them out there. That's all I'm saying.
Right. But I tell you what, in Clarksville is Clarksville's a little bit lower of a. Clarksville is it's a border, or it's a Fort Campbell. It's next to Fort Campbell.
Yes,
it's an army town. So Fort Campbell has, there's a lot of soldiers, and so when you have that. And it's just kind of like a big factory, Andy. Like it's like a couple, say 5 Nissans or 5 GMs are up there or something. You'd have all the tech workers making a certain amount of, a range in pay, like your E1 pay, your officer pay and stuff like that. So people build houses in that area. Most of the builders look at, hey, what can an E6 afford? Because that's about the most, that's the E6 or below or whatever it is, that may be their client. So they kind of look at that price range. Is why, it may be like that. Clarksville's a little bit cheaper or whatever.
I never, that's brilliant. In all my years, and I come from Colorado Springs, where it was Fort Carson. It was the Air Force Base. It was Patterson. It was like, that's military town. Army, all of it.
Clarksville's the same way. Clarksville's a big military town. Like our Clarksville office, when we had a Clarksville office, we did, it was 90% VA loans.
I bet you. Oh,
yeah.
And they're awesome, good people. It's a good scenario. But your point is that's a stable income base and I don't mean that in a bad way. It's a good thing.
Right. There's different towns, like, a lot of, like, if you go, it's just like Silicon Valley, right? If you go down Silicon Valley and you're one of these tech giants, and you're probably living in, your neighborhood might be $5-10 million or whatever. Oh. So it's kind of, it's a little bit based on, just your demographics of the community.
Yeah. Yeah. and then he started asking for some amenities, and, you may or may not find that kind of thing up there. That's more elsewhere. But anyway, it was a great conversation with the guy. He'll be coming out soon, a couple of months. So pending sales. 62,000. It's down it's down 8.5%. Now I'm going someplace with this. It's positive. The new listings that are coming up, there's 65,000. It was up over a year ago, 5%. Active listings is down 3.8. That means that there's some of them are selling off the market. The month's supply, 4.8. I saw locally it's about 3.2 here. It was up 0.2. Share of homes off the market, 30. Anyway, all of this to say, if touring is up, we know what's going to happen, at least in my experience for the couple of decades, coming up on 2 decades. Every spring, starting in March, contracts start to fly. And what people are doing is they're touring and they're looking at properties. And because inventory is so low, it's in my estimation that my theory is when the daffodils start to pop up, so do the listings. That just seems to be the way it works. And people were going to get out touring. When more listings come up, then there's going to be more availability. And that's when people are going to start buying. We're probably, would you say a month out, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, it's as long as things head the way they're going, I like these numbers. You see some of them are like it's only up 5% or 10% from last year, but we're not expecting a huge gain over last year. We're expecting a modest gain. So, a 10, 15, 20% over last year is right in line with kind of what a lot of people are projecting. Now, I don't project it be like that in January, especially the January we've had, but yes, I expect things to continue to pick up as they are right now.
Absolutely. And here's what I'm going to give my thought on: should you buy now or wait? And yes, there's going to be those that say, well, you're a real estate agent, so people should always buy. That's not what I've been saying this last year. This last year I've been saying, wait till it's right for you. When it's right for you, then it's okay to go. Don't just buy to be buying. I'm not that guy. But in this particular case, we've talked about the Fed. We've talked about slow moving rates. And that's why I asked Rodney the question, are things bouncing around violently? No. Are they bouncing around a little bit? Yes. Are they a little higher than people want them to be? Yes. Do we expect them? Here I am answering all my own questions. Do we expect them to drop precipitously during the course of this year? I don't. We're getting projections of 5%, 6%. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's talk to Jerry.
Yeah. I fully, I'm thinking it's, like I said, they predicted 2024 to be, in the sixes. Right.
Yes.
So we started the year out in the sixes. So I fully expect us to be, because outside of 1%, it's not going to move the needle enough to do anything. So I expect them to get it, in the fives at minimum sometime this year.
Now, I'm going to break something down that I just heard you say, for anybody that's listening and is just thinking about houses and rates and stuff like that. What Rodney just said was anything within 1%. What you're saying is when you buy a house, is if it's within 1%, it's not going to be a huge, massive change.
No, I'm saying if
right?
Let's say we're at 6.5 right now.
Yes.
And in order to see a significant shift in the real estate business,
yes,
I think it needs to go down at least a point. I think 5.5 would be an indicator to where we're going to see a double-digit increase over last year. But if it just scoots around and doesn't do anything, stays where it's at, 0.5%, 0.25% better, then we may be in the lower projections of 2, 3, 4, 5% better than what we were last year.
God. And so that brings me to my point. What Rodney is saying is, in order to have it go gangbusters, it's going to have to drop a point. Is that going to happen? I don't. My crystal ball's in my truck. I don't have that. But home prices, we just went through this. Home prices only went up 5%. Way different than it was a couple of years ago. Are we going to see home prices drop? No. When they're talking about price cuts, all they're talking about really on price cuts is when a house is overpriced and they've got to lower it to get it to sell.
Yeah.
Then there's the percentage sold asked to sold ratio, and that's where somebody listed at 600 and they get 585, whatever the case is. It's like 98%, pretty close. Things just aren't going to move that much. It seems like it's overwhelming because there's a lot of numbers being thrown at us every day in the news, and everything's being sensationalized. But the fact is, for the rest of the year, we're not going to see, I don't think, a lot of volatility. Something could happen that's out of the blue sky. Sure, stuff happens like that. Yeah. COVID, blue sky, right? Where'd that come from? But if you're thinking about buying, and if you're ready, if you're prepared, if you've got your savings and you're ready to go, and you got your DTI and you've talked to your lender, buy your house. For the love of heaven, buy your house, don't wait. There's a saying that it's better to buy a house and wait rather than wait to buy a house. That's my take on that. Because I guarantee you this, next year, a house is going to be more expensive. 2 years after that, it's going to be more expensive still.
I'll back you up on that. I'm more of a when somebody asks me that question, I generally know the answer to it, but I'm answering in a form of numbers, right? Mm-hmm. So if you just say, okay, you take all the emotion out of it, buying, blah blah blah. I'm kind of a numbers guy, and the way I look at it is like this: is you find a house today. You look at your and I know Davidson County, Williamson County, I know their numbers. So if you look at a house today and it's listed at $600,000, and you decide you want to wait 1 year, and it goes up 5%, which is low for our area, that's $30,000. So now you're paying $630 for that house in 1 year. No matter what you did, no matter what happened, your interest rate that you would have chosen today is not going to be enough to save you $30,000 the next year. It might not save you. It might not save you anything. You kind of buy when you need to buy, and then you manage that debt, in my opinion, because you buy in a window of your lifetime. Like, you don't buy like, oh, the rates are good. Yeah, old people do that, right? Everybody, like me, somebody sitting with a house, we can, old people gonna buy when the rates are good or whatever, because we're in our house. We don't have to do anything. But people who need to buy right now, you're better off buying instead of waiting for the prices to go up. Because if you did it the last few years, you're not looking at 5%. You're looking at 15%, 20%. So you're looking at, paying $720 for that house. If the rates go to 5.5%, you're like, oh, I'm waiting. Well, now that house is $660 because it's normally went up 5%, and then it's going to go up another 5 or 10% because you're in a bidding war, and everybody else is going to be bidding on it too. So you don't know all that stuff's going to happen, but if you're in a good market, whether it's this county, another county, or you're in the middle of Tulsa, Oklahoma, and you're in a hot area, and you can go on it. I can go on this site and look at it, and if it's projected to go up 5-6%, you need to buy. Like, if rates are holding you back, you need to buy. Yeah. But that's a kind of a financial money decision, just kind of based on the way I look at things. So,
And it seems to me that the people that are ready, and all I'm saying is, when I bought my house, I didn't know if I was ready. I'm just telling you, I didn't. I was not one of those people that keeps everything, keeps his QuickBooks open up in the window all the time. I'm not that guy. But if you find out, if you talk to your lender, if you're ready to go and the numbers look good, don't be afraid to buy. It's the best thing that I ever did. It sounds like I'm singing a realtor song. I'm just saying,
It's a good song. I mean, it's the number one way Americans make money. I mean, it's over and over again.
Yeah.
Equity in their house, real estate. I mean, it's foolish to rent if you can. If you can buy, and you know you're going to be in that area for a few years, anyways.
Yeah, yeah. And Angie just hit, and I think she's just kind of verifying what it is that backing you up, basically. And she's really smart. She's careless about rates, care about the price of the house. And boy, I wish we could sing. I wish I could sing that from the rooftop. Well, I guess I am, kind of, sort of.
It's just not
going around the world.
YouTube rooftop. Same difference.
Same difference. And then the bottom line is, if the price of the house is what matters, it's going to be more expensive next year. And as a realtor, the thing that I like to look at when somebody's looking at houses is, as listings become more and more available, that means more and more options for you. And that means that sometimes those homes become more negotiable, because all of a sudden the sellers, the listings, they have more competition. That's a good thing,
Mm-hmm.
And when you're looking at any particular area, if you're doing your searches and you have 4, 5, 6, 7 houses as options, that's a good place. If you're searching in an area and there's 0 houses, you're in the wrong place. That's just a little friendly tip there,
Yeah. Well, you might want to live there, but it's just going to be, you're just going to have to a lot of patience and get lucky, and a good realtor, a whole bunch of stuff in that situation. But honestly, it's what our circus of a market is right now. We don't know if we're getting on a ride or a dune buggy ride right now when you go buy real estate. And that's what's so frustrating for clients, is like, well, buckle up. We don't know if we're going to get accepted offer first time, or they're going to tell us they got 50. It's kind of weird right now. So,
yeah, and I would say that leads us right on to the housing supply question. We've got, and it seems like an old song, and it is, really, meaning locked in rates. We know about that. We know about. There's a lot of, what's the percentage of people that have a below 4% rate is pretty high percentage. And that's going to keep people from selling recreationally.
Right. Yeah.
For the positive prognostications for the housing market in 2024, particularly an expected drop in mortgage rates mid-year, there's still significant obstacles to overcome before the market normalization takes effect, and that means business picking up. Simply as that. And it says, and we've been saying this the whole time, pent up demand, and that's what Rodney's talking about. As soon as we drop that certain percentage, whatever the magic number is,
right? Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's going to take historically low rates either. Like I said, I think there's been 2 different studies, and both of them have been in the high 5s for the majority of the pent up people asking or saying that they would be potentially get back into the market if the rates hit, in the high 5s.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, so demand is there. People are just waiting for that magic number. I wish there was an answer for that.
It is, and there's just a reasonableness to every human being that wants to have a reason. It's like, I really want to move, but I don't. It's not worth it. And the housing supply is one of the biggest things that the government has zero control over, right?
Zero control.
This is that's, they can do things with policies, they can do things with rates, but they have not been able to. They can't. I mean, they can't dictate how many builders build and all that stuff. So.
And that's what we were saying before. Powell and his the Fed, and this is not a knock. Hey, we're on the verge of a soft landing here. Kudos to those guys.
Yeah.
And what else is new? Everybody, everything that you read, questions their next act. I mean, how many miracles do you need? You know, I mean, these guys have done pretty good, you know. And then,
well, you know, they've got a really good ending in sight, but you know, I think the frustration from everybody, and I could be kind of thrown in this category, is like, you know, could they have done it faster than 2 years? Like, you know, is there other ways to do things, you know, besides, you know, this right here? And so, but there's a lot of other stuff going on with our, you know, our government and politics, and all that affects the money and all this stuff. So, you know,
and that's what this Logan was talking about, is the theory, and I agree. I mean, as much as I can, the theory on cooling inflation off is you have to break the economy, get people to stop spending money of their own accord because they're feeling pain. He talked a lot about pain. Well, what you're saying is perhaps we didn't need as much pain that has been inflicted.
Well, for the length, you know, I mean, you know, I don't know if they could have reversed rates right now that the job, you know, a month ago, if the job markets, this seasonal stuff wouldn't be going in the direction it's going right now without it. And that's where I'm not smart enough to get in there. Well, they should have done it 6 months earlier or whatever. I don't know. You know, but I do know that we've been struggling for a couple of years, and the government has intentionally kept our rates up. Right. And it is because the economy, you know, I won't say economy is doing great, but Americans, well, I mean, we all spend, like, you know, the credit card debt right now is through the roof at all-time highs and stuff like that. So, yeah, I mean, we're spending money, but it's like, I don't know if it's all cash, you know what I'm saying? It's like, you know, but it is what it is, you know.
It's somebody's money. It just may not be
yes.
ours.
Yes.
But then when we look at all of that and the effect, and again, we're talking about leading versus lagging. There's just over 1 million homes. I can look it up specifically, but I won't. There's just over 1 million homes for sale nationwide. Over 1 million. Normally, it's 2.5 to 3 for sale.
Wow.
That's a lot of homes that are not listed. That's what would be normal. The normal sales numbers is like 5.7, but if you talk about garden variety, how many houses sell during the course of the year, it's 5.7. And now it's like 3.7. Last year, it was terrible. It was tough. But not to get off on the negative stuff, that's just a lagging indicator that, hey, the economy's cool enough. Let's go, you know?
Yeah, I mean, this is, to me, it fits right. Like the luxury home fits. I mean, it should be the last thing moving. Or why would somebody list their luxury home if they're going to go out and get a new mortgage right now?
Yeah.
You know, because they're going to pay significantly more in interest when they do that. So, yeah, I mean, I totally see that. That's exactly why I said that, you know, right now, stay away from, you know, don't even look at the median home price unless you really know you're only looking at to see what's going on right now. Because as soon as rates drop, it's not that every house is worth more. It's that you're getting a better mixture of the whole market instead of the lower end of the market, you know, when these bigger houses start selling.
Yeah. And did you know that last year, 32% of the homes sold was new construction? 32%. 32%. That's a lot. I mean, that's a lot. It's like those guys figured out, hey, there's a need here. Let's fill it.
That's awesome, because that means 32% of them don't have a 2% rate and is going to live in that forever, right?
But it's good that they tried that, and then now it looks like apartment building has come to a screeching halt. It's my understanding, and that's not my market, but I did read enough to know that seems to be slowing down. New builds is doing good, and so I guess the final thing we could touch on is that you just touched on it, was the luxury homes. Mm-hmm. That the prices of luxury homes rose at twice the pace of non-luxury homes at the end of 2023, partly because elevated mortgage rates are irrelevant to the affluent buyer. Low inventory is another factor driving prices up. Even though the luxury new listings rose, overall supply is still below pre-pandemic norms. Jeez.
Well, yeah. See, I kind of I guess I'm it says, um, what's it saying? The rates doesn't matter for luxury homeowners. That's an easy comment, but the whole reason there's no listings and the whole reason that it's a buyer's market is because nobody's listing. They're not selling them because they're not. They don't want to. They're truly in the golden handcuffs. So it's not that. Yeah, I mean, so yeah, if you have a very affluent buyer going out and buying right now, they may not care about the rate, obviously, but the affluent buyer is cheap enough that most of them are sitting in their house. That's why the inventory is so low, in my opinion, right?
And I can tell you that down through the years, the little peek behind the curtain, and this is not betraying anybody's trust, is that sometimes things aren't as they seem. That's all I can. It's all I can say. That you can see a big house and really nice cars, but that doesn't mean debt free. That doesn't mean Dave Ramsey lives there. So.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
And one of the comments in this particular article said the typical U.S. luxury home sold for a record 1.17. The average in Williamson County is 1.6. So
yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's a little, but yeah, I mean, we're just. I think the rates are a big factor in luxury homes not being listed versus the title of the article being luxury homeowners don't care about rates, or vice versa. Yeah.
I think that the incidence of people being able to buy cash is much higher. The percentage of buyers with the ability to buy that cash in that category is probably higher than somebody that's buying 400.
It's off the charts. It's off the charts. It has been off the charts. It's never. I've never seen stuff like that. Cash buyers were occasional before COVID, and then when COVID hit, remote work hit, cash buyers were heck, I want to say up to 20% of the market or something. I mean, it was crazy.
It's crazy. It's like, and you start asking that question like, where'd you make your money? And I mean, you have to.
Well, it's they're selling a house where they've been through 3 of these. Like if you go to a lot of these larger cities, every city in California has been through this 5 times. Miami, a lot of the big cities in Atlanta, they've been through what we've gone through probably multiple times, and
yeah, God, it's crazy. Well, I guess the bottom line, as we start to shut this thing down, is and that's the reason I wanted to bring this particular topic up, is it's February. As far as I'm concerned, and I think Rodney would agree, we're right on track when it comes to, they're talking about an increase in touring homes. We're right on track. And that's always just a little ahead of the game before the listings start coming up. Because the people that are going to be listing are going to be the more or less the people that kind of have to. It's job change. Maybe the family's dynamic has changed. Maybe they need more bedrooms, whatever. It's that, I call it recreational stuff, is going to be sort of at a minimum. But the theory still applies, or people think it does, and I think that's probably true to a case, that when it starts to get spring and people can get out, prices on houses go up a little bit. That's what they're thinking. And I can't say that they're wrong, but that's seasonally what typically happens. That's what people do, is they list in the spring because it seems right. That's all.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I think it's and I think our I don't know what you call it, just a lot of random purchases. People are going to get used to that our rate range in the sixes, you know, and they'll
100%.
become more comfortable with that, and be, you know, that's the norm. And so people who want to buy and they feel like that's the normal rate will buy at that rate. Um, it's the sellers that's going to help the inventory issue. We got to get the rates down in the mid fives to get the inventory. Hopefully, with the pin-up demand will help some inventory with a 1-versus-1 swap or whatever.
So here's Angie's question, and this is a good one. So will prices go down in the fall? Home prices, if that's what you're saying. I just don't see it.
I see it getting better. I see, you know, if we hit the forecast of a 4 or 5% increase in our counties that they're projecting right now, I think that'd be. I hope that's what we get. I hope it ain't 10 or 15%.
In
But
terms
now,
of
if
an
you go in these
increase,
outer counties, Andy, like I know Angie talked about Chattanooga a bunch. What about some of those up there in that county up there? Have you seen any trends or?
in where?
Well, I know Chattanooga. I know what Chattanooga's done. Chattanooga's like everybody else. It's a good city, but maybe a county outside of that or anywhere.
I don't know anything about that area.
Up there, Grundy County. You know anything about Grundy County?
Isn't that right on? That's right on the next to the Smokies, right? I mean, that's right there.
I think Grundy County, somewhere near the Chattanooga or in some kind of lake down there. Not as far east, but
sounds lovely. sounds. I don't know anything about those.
I don't know how lovely it is, but it's out there.
Competition for buyers. I think if here's the way I see. Here's the only way I can answer this, and this is going to be kind of a fluffy answer. Is I think Rodney is right on when we talk about one of the things that people need as consumers, not just for houses, but as consumers, consistency. So once the rates settle down, and they like it or not, 6.5 to 7, that's where call it the pocket for rates. That's what it is. And that's what it's going to be doing that for a while. I guess 6.5 is optimistic, but it was close to that. As people get used to that, they're going to say, well, this is normal. So let's go look at houses based on that normal. That's what that's going to be. And as more and more people become comfortable with that, there's going to be more and more buyers in the market. And the risk is if we don't have inventory to take care of those guys, the competition is going to be out there. And prices, the supply and demand demands that prices go up when that's the case. That's just...
I agree. I think I mean, the government wants our rates to go down. I mean, the government wants our real estate industry to pick back up without everybody spending every cent they got, and inflation and job market's going crazy. So they're going to get the rates lower in a position where if we got, you know, if you look at activity in 2023 with those rates, 24 is going to be better. Like just for the simple fact that people will buy with a lower rate, right? So our numbers are going to increase. So whatever inventory we have now is scooped up. Like it's good. I do not see, you know, I don't think it's going to get crazy, but I do think that the rates will put enough people in there where it's, again, going to sideline first-time home buyers.
Yeah.
But we may not go as far, but I bet we sideline first-time home buyers again.
Yeah. And for the people that are ready to go, here's what I think. Well, I know this. Well, I believe this to be true, that there is a subset of buyers, whether they're first-time or not, that are financially, they're ready to go. They're prepared. They've done their homework. They're ready to go. They're just waiting for that moment when the market is either I'm okay with the way it is or something changes. And that's going to be a pretty large subset of people that it's like early adopters. Once they get out there, then everybody else is come on in, the water's fine. And then it starts, and it starts to flow. And I see it got nothing but better from here. But if somebody's trying to time the market, which you're not, that's not what you're saying. That's a fool's errand, is what they would say. Because how many people have you heard, Rodney, over the last year or so? Boy, I shouldn't, in 2020, I shouldn't have waited, because people were waiting in 21 too.
I actually hear more of people who just flat out lost out, like that didn't wait and lost out. Like that's the ones I hear. I hear more from is like, yeah, the waiting's one's easy. You can just say, well, you shouldn't have waited. Like this is crazy. But for the guys who tried, like my assistant's been doing this. He's been going through it. He's been trying to buy and buy and buy, and so anyways, he has it in the last year or two, but he tried and it got out.
Oh God, it's frustrating. So, any final thoughts on this lovely Tuesday, Rodney?
No, all some good information there. I will say next time we do a buy versus rent, I've got a really good thing that we can put up there, and it's in that same share screen. We should run the numbers. May even run it next week just to throw something out and just kind of review the numbers for a few minutes, because that I'm a numbers guy, and it's like I can plugs in the annual percentage rate increase and things like that, compares it to rent. Things like that, so we can put it in there and so everybody could see it. And
I'll make a thumbnail on buy versus rent for next week. We'll just go that way. That's a great idea, Rodney. I can't thank you enough. And Ange, thanks for being here. For anybody that's been watching us, you can send us a text. Our phone number is in there for text, phone calls, email, all of that. Reach out to us. We'll talk to you about anything that we can to try to help you out with real estate, with lending with Rodney. And that's all I got. Rodney, no more. That's it for you.
That's it. Y'all have a great day. Great week.
See y'all. Bye-bye now.